Chapter 1. The gift given with a smile at her wedding. The stepmother gifted her stepdaughter something that looked generous and honorable, but it carried jealousy, bitterness, and a hidden curse. The drums had been beating since dawn. They thundered across the red earth of Umadara village, rising and falling like the breath of the ancestors themselves. Women ululated, men clapped in rhythm, and children ran barefoot between guests, laughing as if joy itself had taken form that day. The sun stood high and proud, pouring its light upon the compound where the wedding was taking place, as though even the heavens had come to witness the union. At the center of it all knelt Niru, the bride. Her wrapper shimmered softly in shades of cream and gold, her head bowed low in respect as tradition demanded. Beads rested against her collarbone, and her hands, steady but tense, were folded neatly on her lap. She was calm on the outside, but inside her chest, her heart beat like a trapped bird. For this day had once been declared impossible. Years ago, the woman now seated among the elders had sworn it would never come. "You will not marry before my daughters," her stepmother had said then, her voice sharp as broken calabash. "Not while I still breathe." Yet here Niru was alive, adorned, chosen. The groom stood a few paces behind her, tall and dignified, his face glowing with pride. He was a good man from a respected family, and the elders had approved the union without hesitation. Many whispered that it was fate. Others said it was the ancestors correcting an old injustice. Only one person watched the ceremony with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Madame Olama, the stepmother. She sat upright, her back straight, her head wrapped in expensive cloth, her lips curved in what appeared to be quiet satisfaction. To anyone watching, she looked like a woman at peace, gracious, composed, proud to give away a daughter she had raised. But beneath that smile was a storm. Every drumbeat was a reminder of defeat. Every cheer was a slap to her pride. Niru's happiness burned her like hot oil poured slowly onto the skin. When the time came for the bride to receive gifts, the elders called each family forward. One by one, relatives stepped out offering goats, yams, nuts, money, and blessings spoken aloud for all to hear. Then the chief elder raised his staff. "Let the mother of the bride come forward." A hush fell. Madame Olama rose smoothly, as though she had been waiting for this moment all her life. Two young women followed behind her, carrying a folded cloth on a carved wooden tray. Even from a distance, the wrapper caught the light, old, finely woven, its patterns intricate and solemn. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "That cloth looks ancestral." "Oh, that is not ordinary fabric." Madame Olama stepped before Niru and cleared her throat. "My daughter," she began, her voice honeyed and calm. "Today, I give you what was once given to me." Niru lifted her eyes slowly. For a brief moment, their gazes met. In the stepmother's eyes, something flickered too fast to name. "This wrapper," Madame Olama continued, lifting it gently, "has been worn by women who entered marriage with peace. It carries prayers, endurance, and the patience of generations of wives." The elders nodded in approval. "This is a great honor," one murmured. Madame Olama smiled wider. "I kept it for the day one of my daughters would need it," she said. "But today, I give it to you. Wear it on your first night as a wife, and may your home know no trouble." A sharp silence followed. Niru's throat tightened. Tradition left her no choice. To refuse a gift, especially one offered publicly by an elder, was to invite shame. Slowly, Respectfully, she stretched out her hands and received the wrapper. The cloth was heavier than she expected. As it touched her skin, a chill crept up her arms. Quick and unwelcome, she swallowed, forcing a smile. "Thank you, Mother," she said softly. The crowd erupted in praise. "How kind! What a generous woman! May the ancestors bless such a stepmother." Madame Olema bowed her head humbly, soaking in the admiration. Inside, her heart sang a darker song. "Wear it," she thought. "Let it touch your joy." The ceremony continued. Laughter returned, and the drums grew louder. Yet Niru could not shake the strange weight of the cloth resting beside her. As evening approached and the sun bled into the horizon, an old woman bent with age, her eyes clouded but sharp, leaned toward the bride. "Child," she whispered, "be careful of gifts that come too late." Before Niru could ask what she meant, the woman vanished into the crowd. That night, as the bride was led into her new home, the ancestral wrapper waited, and so did the curse woven into it.
If you love African folktales like this, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and join our storytelling family for more magical tales.
Before the drums, before the beads, before the smile Madame Olama wore on the wedding day, there were years that taught Niru how to endure. Her father's death did not announce itself with thunder or wailing. It arrived quietly, like harm often does. One morning he went to the farm, and by evening, the compound breathed differently. His voice was gone. His footsteps no longer sounded at dawn, and in the space his absence created, something colder moved in. Madame Olama changed. At first, it was subtle. Food portions grew smaller. Instructions came sharper. Mistakes were remembered longer than kindness. Then the subtlety died. Niru became the first awake and the last asleep. She swept before the sun rose, fetched water while the dew still clung to the grass, and cooked meals she was rarely allowed to finish. When Madame Olama's daughters laughed, Niru was reminded she was lucky to hear it. When they cried, she was blamed. "You should have been watching them. You're useless if you cannot do even this. You eat like someone who forgets her place." The house learned a new order, and Niru learned where she stood within it. But cruelty is not always loud. Sometimes it is patient. As Niru grew, her beauty arrived quietly too, uninvited, undeniable. Neighbors noticed first, then elders, then women began to whisper. Madame Olama noticed last, and when she did, something hardened inside her. The day the words were spoken was ordinary. No ceremony, no witnesses called on purpose, just a courtyard, late afternoon light, and a silence that felt deliberate. Niru had returned from the stream when Madame Olama called her name. She stood with her daughters beside her, arms folded, her face unreadable. "You are growing," she said. Niru lowered her eyes. She had learned that looking directly invited trouble. "Listen carefully," Madame Olama continued. "I did not carry you in my womb. I did not suffer for you the way I suffered for my daughters." Her voice was calm. That was what made it dangerous. "You will not marry before my daughters," she said. "Not while I am alive." The words fell heavy and final, like a curse spoken without ceremony. Niru said nothing. What was there to say? Promises spoken by elders were not argued with. They were endured. From that day, the house became a gate. Suitors came and were turned away. Some were told Niru was stubborn, others that she was sickly. A few were warned she carried bad luck. Each time, Niru found out later, through whispers or overheard arguments. Hope learned to keep its voice low. Years passed. Then fate, stubborn and unmannered, arrived anyway. He saw her not as a burden, but as a woman. When he was discouraged, he returned. When lies were told, he asked elders. When Madame Olama's resistance hardened, the village began to murmur. Why should the sins of the house follow the girl? Is bitterness now stronger than destiny? Some things moved beyond one woman's control. The elders spoke, the ancestors were consulted, and the marriage was approved. Not because Madame Olama agreed, but because the vow spoken in jealousy could not stand against what was meant. And so the wedding day came. The same woman who once swore never now stood smiling, holding a gift. And Niru, who had endured years of cruelty in silence, knelt to receive it. The night of Niru's first sleep in her new home arrived quietly, yet it felt heavier than any night she had ever known. The celebration of the wedding had faded into memory, replaced by the hush of unfamiliar walls, the faint smell of burning incense, and the ever-present weight of the wrapper lying beside her on the bed. Her husband had tried to make her comfortable, speaking gently as he guided her to the mat, but even his warm hands could not ease the tightness that had settled in her chest. Slowly, Niru reached for the wrapper. Its fabric was soft, worn by generations, yet it seemed alive in her hands. The patterns shimmered faintly under the lamp's light, like faint whispers trapped in thread and dye. With a careful breath, she wrapped it around her shoulders. The moment it touched her skin, an unaccountable chill ran down her spine. The warmth of the room seemed to retreat, and she shivered despite the night being gentle and still. Her husband watched her, concern etched into his features. "Are you cold?" he asked softly. "No, I'm fine," Niru replied, forcing a smile she did not feel. As the hours passed, Niru tried to rest. Sleep, however, was uneasy. At first, it came in the form of small disturbances, a whisper in the room that seemed too soft to catch, a shadow that flickered when her eyes were closed. She thought the mind was playing tricks until the second hour of night when the wrapper tightened against her shoulders. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable. She thought it was the folds of the cloth, but the tightening increased, slow and deliberate, like hands unseen pressing against her, urging her heart to pound faster. Niru stirred. "Is something wrong?" her husband whispered, placing a hand over hers. I don't know," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She tried to pull the wrapper free, but it clung to her skin. When she lifted it from her arms, it recoiled, as if unwilling to leave her. The shadows in the room deepened unnaturally. From the corners, faint shapes seemed to move, but when Niru blinked, they were gone. The room itself seemed to shrink, pressing closer around her, and the air felt heavy, carrying a faint smell of damp earth and old smoke. Her breath caught. A whisper came from somewhere beneath the fabric, low and clear, yet impossible to locate. "You should not have married first," it said. Niru froze. The words were the same as those spoken years ago, though no one else had said them this night. Her fingers trembled on the wrapper. "You wore what was never meant for you," the voice continued, growing firmer, almost alive. Tears sprang to her eyes, and she clutched the wrapper desperately, pulling it close. Her husband tried to calm her, but he could not see the unseen pressure that gripped her chest. When morning arrived, Niru woke drenched in sweat. The wrapper was tangled around her body, heavier than before. For a moment, she could not remember if she had slept at all. Her husband, worried, helped her to her feet. "You look pale. Are you feeling unwell?" I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I had dreams. Or maybe not dreams. Something strange outside the bedroom. The sun rose normally, spilling golden light across the walls, but Niru felt as though the brightness was muted. She tried to shake off the night's terror, but every time she moved the wrapper, a faint pull resisted her efforts, drawing her back. The following days brought no relief. The wrapper, though beautiful and honored, seemed to drain her energy. When she wore it, small accidents began to happen. Cups tipped over without reason. Mats tore. Fires burned hotter than expected. Even the simplest of tasks seemed to multiply her fatigue. Neighbors began to notice. "She should be glowing with joy," whispered one woman. "But her eyes, they carry fear. She looks as if the weight of the earth has fallen on her shoulders," another said. Niru could not explain it herself. She prayed silently, spoke to ancestors, but the sensation never left. At night, The whispers returned. Shadows stretched longer than the moon should allow. The fabric would tighten, or sometimes grow impossibly heavy, as if it had absorbed the day's troubles and pressed them all upon her. The elders were finally consulted. They examined Niru and the wrapper carefully, their brows furrowed. "This is no ordinary cloth," one said gravely. "Something binds it: anger, jealousy, a will that is not yours. This is woven not only with thread, but with a spirit that will not rest until its desire is fulfilled." Madame Olema sat quietly during this examination. Her face was calm, controlled, but her fingers flexed unconsciously around the edge of her wrapper, the one she had brought to the wedding. Niru's heart sank further. She had accepted a gift that was a blessing in appearance but a prison in reality. Every stitch, every fold seemed to hum with the stepmother's bitterness. That night, she tried to remove it completely, but it would not let go. And in the stillness, she heard the whisper once more, "You were never meant to wear me lightly." Misfortune did not arrive all at once. It came in fragments, as though testing how much Niru could bear before she broke. At first, it hid itself in small things that could be easily dismissed. A pot slipped from her hands and shattered, though she was certain her grip had been firm. A calabash cracked while being washed, splitting cleanly down the middle like a thing already weakened from within. Each time it happened, Niru stood frozen, staring at the pieces, her heart beating faster than the sound of the damage. Carelessness, some said, but Niru knew her hands. They had served her stepmother's house for years without failing. They did not betray her without reason. Soon, the accidents began to follow her. When she swept the compound, dust rose into her eyes until tears streamed down her face, blinding her. When she cooked, smoke thickened unnaturally, stinging her throat and leaving her coughing long after the fire had died. The wrapper clung to her body through it all, heavy and warm, pressing into her skin as though reminding her of its presence. At night, sleep abandoned her. She would lie awake listening to the walls breathe, certain that something moved just beyond her sight. Sometimes the wrapper tightened gently around her waist, not enough to hurt, but enough to wake her. Other nights, she dreamed of walking endlessly, the ground beneath her feet turning soft and sinking, pulling her down as the wrapper grew heavier with each step. She woke from these dreams exhausted, her body aching as if she had truly been walking all night. Her husband noticed. "You were strong when you came here," he said one evening, his voice thick with worry. "What is happening to you?" Niru wanted to tell him everything, but the words tangled in her throat. How could she explain something she herself did not fully understand? Instead, she shook her head. "I don't know," she whispered. "It feels like I am carrying something that does not belong to me." The village began to react. Neighbors whispered when Niru passed. Some stepped aside, not out of respect, but unease. Children stopped playing near her, called away by their mothers with hurried voices. "She brings strange luck," one woman muttered. Another replied, "It started after the wedding. Even the animals seemed to sense it." A chicken she fed daily began to avoid her, flapping wildly when she approached. A goat broke free of its tether and ran the moment she touched its rope, nearly trampling her in its escape. One morning, she found a lizard dead at her doorway, its body twisted unnaturally, each sign stacked upon the last, small but undeniable. Misfortune followed her into her new home. The roof leaked over her sleeping mat, though the rest of the house remained dry. Her cooking fire went out repeatedly, forcing her to relight it again and again, while others cooked without trouble. Once, while carrying water, the claypot cracked against her hip, spilling its contents and leaving a deep bruise that bloomed dark against her skin. The wrapper tightened that night, not painfully yet, but with intent. She tried to remove it completely, folding it carefully and setting it aside. The moment she did, a crushing weight settled on her chest, stealing her breath. Panic surged through her as she struggled to inhale. Only when she reached for the wrapper and draped it back around herself did the pressure ease. Niru sank to the floor, shaking. Tears slid silently down her face. She began to understand. The gift did not only bring misfortune, it demanded presence. Madame Olama heard the whispers too. When she came to visit, she clicked her tongue softly in concern, touching Niru's arm as though in sympathy. Marriage is heavy, she said. Some women are not built to carry it easily. Her eyes lingered on the wrapper. Do not abandon the cloth, she added gently. Some blessings turn their backs when neglected. Niru said nothing. But when Madame Olema turned to leave, a faint smile curved her lips, quick, satisfied, and gone before anyone else noticed. By the end of the week, even the elders could no longer dismiss what was happening. This is not ordinary misfortune, one said quietly. Another nodded. It moves with purpose. They agreed to consult deeper, to question not just the spirits but the source. That night, as Niru lay awake, the wrapper pressed heavily against her ribs. In the silence, a whisper rose again, closer than ever before. You carry what was bound with envy, it said. And envy is patient. Niru closed her eyes, tears slipping into her hair. She did not yet know how this would end, but she knew now that it had begun long before the wedding. By the time the elders agreed to act, denial was no longer possible. Misfortune had lingered too long, moved too deliberately, to be dismissed as chance. What followed Niru was not clumsiness, nor weakness of spirit. It had pattern, it had memory, and worst of all, it had intention. The eldest among them spoke first, his voice low but firm. This matter has crossed the boundary of ordinary life, he said. When suffering refuses to listen to reason, it must be questioned by those older than us all. No one argued. The decision was made to consult the shrine at the edge of the village, the one rarely visited except in times of grave concern. It was said that the ancestors there did not speak often, but when they did, their words left no room for comfort. At dawn, Niru was led there. She walked slowly, the wrapper draped around her shoulders, heavier than ever. Each step felt borrowed, as though her strength no longer fully belonged to her. Her husband stayed close, his presence steady, though worry carved deep lines into his face. Behind them followed the elders, and a short distance back, Madame Olema walked in silence. The shrine sat beneath an ancient tree, its roots thick and exposed, gripping the earth like clenched fists. The air there felt different, cooler, heavier, as though sound itself knew to tread carefully. The diviner knelt before the shrine and began his preparations. Kola nut was broken. Palm wine was poured slowly onto the ground. Cowries were arranged with deliberate care. As each ritual gesture was made, the world beyond the shrine seemed to withdraw, leaving only breath, earth, and waiting. Bring the cloth, the diviner said. The moment the wrapper was placed before the shrine, the air shifted. The cowries rattled softly, though no hand touched them. A low sound rose from deep within the tree, not a voice, not a wind, but something in between. The diviner stiffened. This is no empty object, he murmured. Something has been bound here. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. What kind of binding? One asked. The diviner did not answer immediately. He closed his eyes, his fingers hovering above the wrapper without touching it. Jealousy, he said at last. Cold, patient, carefully tied. A murmur rippled through those gathered. This did not come from outside. The diviner continued. No rival, no enemy from afar. This harm was woven by a hand that smiled. Silence followed. The elders felt it then, the uncomfortable shift from mystery to proximity. If the curse came from within, then someone among them carried its root. Still, no name was spoken. Niru knelt forward slowly. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but steady. There is something I must say, she began. All eyes turned to her. Years ago, she continued, a vow was spoken over me. I was told I would never marry before certain people, that it would not happen while the speaker still lived. A ripple of recognition passed through the elders. They remembered the whispers, the tension, the resistance that had surrounded the marriage from the beginning. A ripple of recognition passed through the elders. They remembered the whispers, the tension, the resistance that had surrounded the marriage from the beginning. The diviner's eyes opened. Words spoken in bitterness do not fade, he said. They wait. As he spoke, the wrapper shifted, not dramatically, not violently, but unmistakably. It grew heavier. Madame Olema inhaled sharply. The diviner noticed. Step forward, he said. She hesitated for the briefest moment, just long enough to be seen, then obeyed. The closer she came, the tighter the wrapper pressed against Niru's body. Her breath shortened. Her shoulders tensed. This cloth knows its maker, the diviner said quietly. Madame Olama laughed a short, brittle sound. You accuse me without proof, she said. I gave a gift, that is all. The diviner raised a hand. The ancestors are not finished. He turned back to the shrine, his voice deepening as he called again upon those unseen. The air grew thick. Then the words came not shouted, not whispered, but carried with undeniable weight. The hand that gave this gift tied its bitterness into it. The silence that followed was complete. All eyes turned slowly, inevitably toward Madame Olama. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since the wedding day, the smile did not return. The silence after the ancestors spoke was not ordinary silence. It pressed down on the shrine like a physical thing, heavy and unforgiving. No bird cried, no leaf stirred. Even the elders' men who had stood before death without blinking felt the urge to lower their eyes. Madame Olama did not. She stood rigid, her chin raised, as though defiance alone could undo what had already been revealed. This is superstition, she said at last, her voice tight. You would turn a family matter into shame because of coincidence? The diviner rose slowly to his feet. Coincidence does not follow one woman with such patience, he replied. Coincidence does not tighten when its maker draws near. As if summoned by his words, Niru gasped. The wrapper constricted again, just slightly, enough to draw blood where cloth met skin. Her husband moved toward her instinctively, but the diviner lifted a hand. Do not touch, he warned. What is bound must first be unbound. The elders turned fully now toward Madame Olama. You swore she would never marry before your daughters, the eldest said, his voice stern. Did you believe the ancestors were deaf? Madame Olama's lips trembled. I spoke in anger, she snapped. Words spoken in a house do not reach the earth. The diviner's staff struck the ground once. Every word spoken with intent reaches somewhere. He knelt again and addressed the shrine. Ancestors of this land, he intoned, you have revealed the hand. Reveal now the remedy. The cowries scattered, then stopped. Their final pattern was unmistakable. A murmur rose among the elders. The diviner exhaled slowly. The gift must return, he said, not in anger, not in violence, but in truth. What was woven from bitterness must sit again with the heart that wove it. Madame Olama's face drained of color. You cannot mean the wrapper must be worn by its giver, the diviner finished. Before witnesses, before the ancestors, before the sun sets. Her laughter came sharp and panicked. You would curse me in my old age, she cried, after all I have done. The eldest elder stepped forward. You cursed yourself when you refused to let your heart soften. They returned to the compound before the whole village. Word had spread faster than feet could carry it. By the time they arrived, people stood in clusters whispering, watching, waiting. Niru stood at the center, trembling but upright. Her husband held her hand openly now, no longer afraid of who might see. The diviner lifted the wrapper carefully. The moment it left Niru's body, she collapsed to her knees not in pain, but in relief. Her breath came freely for the first time in weeks. The tightness vanished. The heaviness lifted. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The diviner turned to Madame Olama. Wear it. She shook her head violently. No, she whispered. I did not mean for it to go this far. The elders did not move. The village did not speak. Slowly, very slowly, Madame Olama reached for the cloth. The moment it touched her skin, she screamed. Not from fire, not from wounds, from memory. Her shoulders bent as if burdened by invisible weight. Her breath shortened. Her face contorted, not in pain alone, but in recognition, as if every jealous thought she had ever hidden returned at once, demanding to be carried. She fell to her knees. The diviner spoke calmly. The curse does not create suffering, he said. It reveals it. Madame Olama sobbed, then not loudly, not theatrically, but with the hollow sound of something breaking open after years of sealing itself shut. I hated her, she confessed, not because she wronged me, but because life favored her when mine felt forgotten. The crowd listened in stunned silence. I wanted her slowed, just a little. I never thought the wrapper loosened. The diviner nodded. The ancestors have heard enough. He lifted his staff again. What was bound is unbound. What was hidden is seen. What was meant for destruction has returned to its source and been exhausted. Madame Olama collapsed fully, the cloth sliding from her body like shed skin. She did not die, but she rose changed. That night, Niru slept deeply for the first time since her wedding. No strange dreams came, no whispers, no tightening cloth. In the morning, she woke to sunlight and laughter, her husband's laughter, unforced, relieved. The wrapper was buried at the edge of the village, beneath the same ancient tree where the truth had been spoken. No one was allowed to retrieve it. Some gifts, once exposed, must never circulate again. As for Madame Olama, she was banished, never to step her foot in the village. And Niru learned something the ancestors had always known. Not every curse comes with fangs and fire. Some come folded neatly, tied with smiles, and presented as gifts.